It's very interesting. We looked at total budgets. Those hay meadows produced more nitrogen for export in total over the 75-year period that they've been used than the higher input annual wheat fields. For in the modern instance, they still essentially match the nitrogen yield of those higher input annual crops. In the past, farmers often didn't even fertilize their annual wheat, but production was much lower. That's why I make that distinction. But throughout, pretty much on every measure and on all indicators, that harvested hay meadow is performing much better. It's putting a lot more resources, plant sugars below ground to drive that below ground ecosystem, feeding the soil organisms and so on. And what we find is that the annual wheat fields have much lower soil quality. So just some of the numbers fairly quickly on this. I use nitrogen because from one system they're harvesting hay, from the other system they're harvesting wheat. So I use nitrogen removal as a rough standard. And even under modern circumstances where the annual wheat fields are receiving 60 or so, sometimes 70 kilos per hectare more nitrogen through fertilizer inputs than the perennial grass. Still, the removal rates, the yield, the nitrogen yield from both systems is essentially the same. And from that, you would expect, since those hay meadows are not receiving inputs, it's essentially just a mining operation, you would expect to see some serious declines in nutrient status and soil health. But in fact, even after 75 years of continual removal, we still have much higher levels of total carbon, and I should mention this is down to a meter depth. So we found differences, significant differences quite deep in the soil profile with those perennial grass